All right. So we start every show off with an intro. You're going to say something like, "Hey, this is Super Joe Pardo, and you're listening to the Break It Down show." You can make that saucy. You can say whatever you want, but that's the basic impact of what you're about to do.
All right.
Go ahead.
Welcome, everybody. I am Super Joe Pardo, and you are listening to Break It Down Show.
That's right. Yes, indeed. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Oh,
The
thank you for having me. I'm pumped. I'm always happy to thank you for adjusting your time too. My Business Geeks podcast changed days from Tuesday to Monday yesterday
yeah,
because one of us is in Australia, and because of the daylight savings time change, it got everything's all messed up.
stand by for 1 second. I got a little
No problem.
technical problem here.
All right.
Okay, I had to move some plugs around. Yeah, man. It's moving schedules is part of what we do. It's one of the things that we'll get fully into the podcast thing. By the way, everybody should go check out Joe. Let's see. Where do I send them to? There are so many different areas. If you go to Super Joe Pardo on Twitter, is a good spot. He's all over Facebook. He's in all of the Facebook groups. He is an absolute player and influencer in the space. So, apart from that, Joe, where else would you send folks to your home webpage, or where do you want folks to go?
superjoepardo.com. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. It's all at Super Joe Pardo. YouTube. It's youtube.com/Super Joe Pardo. Everything is Super Joe Pardo except for Indie PodCon, Independent Podcast Conference. You can go to indiepodcon.com to learn more about that.
Yeah, I guess. All right, so let's get into the podcast thing because
Yeah.
as we're all locked down with the Corona thing and trying to figure it out, a lot of people are trying to do things like write that book, start that podcast, write that screenplay. These are all things that we support around here. We love to support the artistic endeavors, and starting a podcast. Look, you and I both do this for a living, right? So
Yes.
let's play around with this idea. I will throw this limiting factor. Here's what stops a lot of people. Production loses to perfection, and so they don't pull the trigger often enough or at all. What are your thoughts?
No, absolutely. I mean, I find myself falling into this trap all of the time. In fact, if you go back just this year alone, my home base podcast, while I produced other podcasts and been done a lot of other podcasting stuff, my home base podcast, Dreamers Podcast, soon to be changing the name most likely to the Super Joe Pardo podcast, or Super Joe Pardo show, I should say, because branding. But anyway, like if you look back this year, I've only done like 3 or 4 episodes this year so far. And I feel bad. I need to like get back on that horse. But in the meantime, like I started up another show called Business Geeks Podcast with 2 co-hosts. And I also been running the Indie PodCon, or the Indie Pod podcast, every single week after week after week after week, which you Pete, you gotta get on there, man.
I'm in.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You did take the time. Cool. It's cool.
Yeah. So with that whole production over perfection thing and getting it going, like once you started one, all we want to do is start other ones, right? Like we don't want for ideas. But what are the other things that's important? And I wanted to get into this aspect of it is we're so damn nimble. You go to me, hey man, I can't do this time. I got to put my kid to bed. I say, okay, we'll go an hour later because look, there's the on-demand nature. That's the ultimate backup. And now that I'm doing video as well, so I have the live element. We can always talk to people and everything like that. But you don't have to even do that. Like you can literally put this. I could go. I'm going to do quoted thinkers live to tape, and still produce. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have the live event, and then I'm going to have the full production of the podcast. So it's one of the things about a podcast is you're only limited by your imagination.
Yeah, I mean it all depends on the amount of work you want to put into it, right? So one of the things my commitment for the new year was I was going to produce higher quality videos and then strip that out and turn them into podcasts. That was in theory like okay. On Saturday mornings I'm gonna wake up like 4 or 5 a.m., go to the park and do the video, right? And I did it 2 or 3 times. And the problem I ran into was, getting up that early, and having the commitment to do it on the weekend and then editing it and then like I ended up I was going on vacation and there was Podfest and things kind of came up in between, and then the whole coronavirus thing and the opportunity to start up virtual conferences kind of dropped itself into my proverbial lap. And so here's where the perfect versus production comes into play, right? The last video I just did like a week or two, maybe it was 2 weeks ago at this point, or a week and a half ago. I just sat right here at this camera, talked into the camera, and it wasn't high produced or anything like that. But I'm like, I got to get some kind of update. It's been weeks and weeks and weeks now, and I got to do something. So right. Yeah. So it's like, as much as I want to like go, I can't even go to the park. The parks are closed. So as much as I would love to just like go to the park and like wake up early, especially now because it's getting lighter earlier now. I don't have to wait until late in the morning, like get there early, wait until late in the morning to be there right when the sun rises and do all the drone shots and all that. Like I would love to go and do it now, but now the parks are closed. So for me, it's just like I just want to get the content out. So it's like I got to get over that fear of like, hey, I know I said I want to do more produce content that's higher quality, but at the same time, like the time just isn't there. And now I'm focusing on these conferences and I'm helping so many more people in the process that I'm just kind of like, I just got to get over it. I got to get past the perfection. And so even though I constantly I'm drilling it into other people's heads, hey, you need to just get started, right? Or as my boy Chris Kramitzo says, start ugly with his book. I don't want to do that. It's not in me to want to do that. Like I want to do it perfect. I want to do it close to perfect. And sometimes you just gotta look past it and say, at least I'm doing it at all, right? And it's just like running. I'm a big time runner, and I haven't been able to do it a lot lately. But if you're sitting on the couch, you're not moving forward. So even if you're just walking, like that's literally faster than the speed of the couch.
When I'm talking to potential clients, I use exercise as an example all the time. I mean, if you think about podcasting as a person who walks in the gym, they walk into 24-hour fitness and they say, I want to get into shape. And then you see the biggest, baddest guy who's been training and eating a very specific diet and sleeping and making sacrifices like crazy. And you saw that person, you're like, oh my God, I'll never be that. You're right. You won't ever be that, because by the time you put that much time and effort in, you'll be a totally different person too, just like that person was when he walked in. Or like if the only way to learn this is to get in the fucking pool and swim. I can explain to you, here is the Australian crawl. You will take your right arm, and you will do a slight cupping. But until you get into the pool and do your ugly stroke, that's it. So it's absolutely analogous to working out. Like you have to do it. Yes, your traps are puny. Yes, your quads aren't big enough. Yes, leg day is going to suck. And that's how you build a podcast that no matter how good it is on episode 1, 10, 50, 100, you're going to look back at that from episode 250, 400, 1000, whatever it is. And you're going to go, I had no idea. I don't know how I got here. It's completely changed my life. And so if you're going to start, right, like this is the thing, like you have to do it. You got to go and you got to work all of the body parts.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I always say, like, you gotta put the reps in, right? Because the first question is like, well, how do I make money at this? And it's like, no. Like, ask the right question. The question is, how do I get good at this so that people want to send you money, so people want to hire you, so that people want to sponsor you, so that people want to come to your event, so people want to buy your merch. This is my part of my merch. Yeah. So like, those are the things that you have to just learn at getting good, and the only way you're going to do that is putting in the reps. Even if you're going to delete all of those episodes, if you're just like, I'm just going to try and record, all right, I'm going to try again, and keep falling on your face. You just got to keep doing it. It's the only way you're really going to get better at it.
Yeah, and the reasons why you get into a podcast are not going to be the reasons why you fall in love with it and do it incessantly. It is ultimately a hobby, right? But when you get good enough at it, and yeah, the monetization question, you're right. Like we all have our way of answering that question. I say, hey, you have to build something valuable first. No one gives a fuck about your podcast, not even your friends. When you can get your friends to reliably watch your show, now you have something that's possibly valuable enough to take to market. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, do your friends watch your show a lot?
Which friends are we talking about?
Your good friends, your closest, oldest friends,
like my brothers. No,
Yeah.
I don't think any of them watch my show now or
right?
listen
So,
to it now.
and this is the dilemma, right? So you have to find your brothers that live in, like Charlie. Charlie lives in Toronto and builds Fords all day long. I never would have met him except for the show, and he's a dear friend of mine now. And we've actually never even met face to face. He's been to California, but I didn't see him when he was in town. And so, here's someone that we absolutely needed to know each other, but only found each other through the podcast. And you don't get to do that on day one.
I mean, I have a lot of close friends because of the podcast, right?
Sure.
Like, yeah. But like when it comes to like the people that I consider my brothers, I got 4 of them. No, I don't think any of them are listening to my show. But sometimes I am surprised by some of the people that I'm friends with that I wouldn't expect to listen to my show, and they have surprised me in the past. And like, yes, I do listen and watch your show, and I'm like, whoa, like that's really surprising because I look up to these people.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like that's the kind of, even though we're friends, like I still look up to them.
Sure.
And I'm honored that they take the time to listen. Now, part of my problem is I don't listen to I haven't listened to podcasts regularly in a number of years now.
Except for the Break It Down show.
Yeah, except for the Break It Down show. Yes. But it's hard though because I don't have a commute. Like when I was when I started listening to podcasts back in 2005 with the WDW Today show, the first set of crew, they transitioned over to a new roundtable of crew that I just didn't identify with. So, and for me, it was like I listened to that show religiously, but here's why. It started because I wanted information about Disney World. What it ended up being was I became friends with all those guys, and
Yeah.
they inspired me to go and like eventually start my own show. They wanted me, a couple of them wanted me to start podcasting back in 2011. I didn't start until 2014, but they wanted me to, they're like, oh, you should talk about Disney World. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I would get bored. So like I had to find me. I had to find the show that was going to serve me and serve the people who wanted to listen to it. And that took, it took some time. It took some years to like get through the things that I was going through at the time. And then when I found it, I ran with it. Like within so I'm on a plane to Disney World. There's a whole bunch of backstory, which you can find elsewhere, but like I'm on a plane to Disney World and I just released my first DJ album, which I was just showing Pete, my DJ equipment on the other side of this table here in my garage. And, I put out the album and I was doing all these podcast interviews. And I was like, oh, this is a lot of fun. Like, I want to do more of these interviews and things. And the idea came up like, oh, well, you should go on this show called The Entrepreneur on Fire, or you should listen to it. And I was like, oh, why, what is that about? And they're like, oh, he's just interviewing entrepreneurs. I was like, there's shows that just interview people. I was just thought podcasts were like roundtable discussions and stuff. So I was like, but when that plane landed, I had the idea for the Dreamers podcast. I knew a lot more people living their dreams than I did in business. And I wanted to fit at the time. I just left $100 million company in my family's business. So I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. It was a month earlier. I just left. So I was like, all right, I'm going to start this show. Plane lands. I registered a domain name, the Facebook page, the Twitter handle before we get to the rental car. 2 weeks later, right after that, I reached out to my friend Al Kessel, who had just interviewed me on his show for the DJ album. He gave me a few pointers of like what I needed to do in the tech space. Now I already had a tech background, right? I already had a music background, like a recording background, all that stuff. So, and even content creation, because I had been blogging since '96. So for me, like, oh, this was just a thing. I just need a few pointers. 2 weeks later, I had my first episode out. A week after, I was doing 3 episodes a week, and a week after that, 3 weeks later, I was doing 5 episodes a week. I did that for like around about close to 3 months, got up to about 75, 80 episodes, slowed it back down so I could start writing books, and I started, was putting all these pieces together, because I saw the long, the big picture of where I wanted to head, and it just was a matter of time.
Let's just play a little game. So let's talk to that person who wants to start a podcast. And look, let's leave hobbyists aside, right? Like straight up hobby people, like I've got something to say. Let's put that aside. Let's talk to people that are, especially now, going, I have a small business. I have some expertise. I have these things. And so I'm going to put, by the way, I want to say hey to Mary, who's watching. She's East Coast girl. And I love her engagement. Like these are the things that are so magical. Like you find people, and I did a show with Dale Midkiff, who's a very well-known actor. And she's like, I love him. I love what you did. And now like we hang out, like we're becoming friends, So this is cool to be able to do this. So I wanted to make sure I said hi to her. So let's talk to that small business person, that emerging business, even that big business. And I'll throw out an idea, you throw out an idea, and we'll go back and forth and we'll see how long it takes us to even come close. I bet you and I could go indefinitely with like, okay, here's an idea for a podcast for a business. So I'll start, and that way you can play off of that and go from there. If you are in a smart business where you guys write white papers, every white paper should be a podcast. Joe.
So I got to come up with a show for.
Yep.
So I'm formulating a show right now for my family's, for my dad's repair shop, heavy duty repair shop. So we're going to interview experts in the industry of both the trucking and the parts side. To make stronger connections, both with our, for our business and for, for our listeners and ultimately for our customers.
Here's one where like something like this craters your business because everybody's locked down. You're an event planner, right?
Yes.
And so you do weddings, you do bar mitzvahs, you do reunions. You just add in the podcast element, like, hey, I want to take, it's the standard thing with the video, right? But now you don't have to be at the wedding to grab these things. You already have it ready to go. And then as they're teasing the wedding on the website or the registry or their Facebook, so here's 15 conversations with people that love you, and then just continue to add to that. And it's an easy podcast to put together. It doesn't have to be fancy at all.
Here you go. The Diner podcast, because there's the diner rats, if you will, like the mall rats, right. that would probably love to sit down and like listen to the background noises of the diner, and have their morning conversations as if they were sitting at the diner. It sounds a little far fetched, but I'm sure there's an audience for people that would just love that background. It was like that show, like, was it 99%? Invisible or something like that, where it's like those are the sounds of like walking through the escalator in this building or something, but like just for diners, like creating those conversations, or the space, the atmosphere for those conversations.
All right, so Westfield malls, and all of the mall owning companies should have a podcast for their mall. And then as vendors, come and go, whatever, you add them into your thing. And look, it's just a small thing, but whoever that store is, Joe's Camera, who's trying to just clinging on to the edge of retail world, right? You're like, hey, let's do this podcast. So one, I can pitch this to my potential new people that are going to rent space in my mall, whether it's a kiosk or an anchor store or whatever. Like, we provide this value, and you let people come in and be personable, and that they kind of get to be their own Barker. You're like, hey, why don't you come into Joe's? I'm right next to Aunt Annie's, things, or Wetzel's Pretzels, and come on. So you're able to engage the audience, your potential clients, like, oh, I didn't know that guy was down there. I was wondering where he moved from his other place or whatever it is. So mall-based podcasts for folks that own malls.
It's funny. I'm good friends with a guy named Mark Schaub, who had the omgmalls.com, which stood for Orlando Mall Guide, guide.com.
Yeah.
I remember talking to him back in 2014 and being like, dude, do you realize what kind of like sponsorship opportunities you have on your hands? Like, it's so, because they have like 11 malls in Orlando, Florida. Yep. So, for him is this ultimate idea that he could totally, he did tap a lot of resources into it, but ultimately decided to walk away from that. But let's see, if you have, Well, if you have a, let's see. I think if you have how about AMC, right? They're saying that they might not survive
Yeah.
this disaster, right? So maybe they need to spin up some AMC branded podcasts
Yeah.
talking about the movies that they're not showing in their theaters right now, and and bringing back people to the idea, like getting them revved up for the idea of like going back to the movie theater. Because and I think you're right, Pete. At this point, it's really about the marketing to put yourself in front of people, because we don't, like, especially if your business is pretty much on hold, like
Yeah.
if you're not doing anything else, marketing is basically free. For it takes time.
Yeah,
But like
effort.
all
Yeah.
you have is right now is time and effort to put towards it. It's something that you should be looking at doing as heavy as possible. It'll remind people like, hey, we're still here. We might not be open, but we're here for when we are open. I mean, look at like Disney has Disney Plus, reminding people to like constantly like, hey, we still exist when this is back. Like, it might not be the most magical experience for a while, but we're gonna figure it out.
Yeah. And what does Disney and Verizon do? They partner. You go switch to a Verizon plan, Disney Plus for free. They both win. All right, I got another one for you, and we're not going to do this much longer because we can do this the whole show.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You ready for this? Grocery stores, any chain, anywhere, they already give free stuff away, right? You give out a listener code and you say, if you listen, come in with this code on this day, and you get, like the Taco Bell gives away free tacos all the time. Same thing, Publix, Dominic's, Ralph's, whatever the store is, like if you listen to this, free gallon of milk or whatever that branded brand is. And that brand is the one that also, kicks in money. So grocery stores are creating their own podcast, and then they do cool things like, look, if nobody knows this, chefs make fantastic guests. They're artistic, they're people for the most part, and they love to talk about themselves. So you have chefs come on, and then you just talk about things that make people hungry while they're in your store. And once they get savvy to this, you blockchain this, right? So you track the listener's location, and then their coupon codes go up if they're listening to the podcast in the store while they're shopping. Bam. $1 billion idea.
Yeah. No, I think that, they speaking of that, like the Kmart music is available like on YouTube and stuff.
Right.
Like the 1974, like this is what they were playing. Kmart has like the, welcome shoppers. This is the blue light specials going on over at blah 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 blah. Like yeah. So there's an audience for all kinds of things. Yeah. And like I said, if all you have is time right now, this is the time to just remind people like we're still here, we're still doing things, even if you can't see us. I mean, even like I don't want to keep going back to Disney, but obviously I'm a big Disney fan. Like they're still taking care of their animals and stuff. Like they're still taking care of the shrubbery. Like they are very much gearing up to open back up at some point when it becomes feasible.
Yeah, absolutely. So so we've done that exercise, and it's pretty cool. I want to point out that audience, right? We talked about this earlier. Like this is one of the ways that you get to monetization if you can build an audience. Now, I'm looking at Joe Rogan's site and his episode from 3 days ago, the full episode, not one of the other 20 snippets from those episodes that also have millions of hits. But he has, get this, from this one episode, 2.9 million views, right? Jeez. So when you talk about audience size, that can seem, and is, impossible to get to that point. However, audience quality is, in Joe's case, it's a little different because his audience is so big and so good. But when you talk about audience, let's talk about what is a good audience. What's a reasonable goal for someone starting out, and like maybe numbers, or what do you think?
I try not to look at it from a numbers perspective. I try to look at it from a people perspective. I mean, that's one of the things that people have really loved about sponsoring my show, about being on my show, about the people that have paid to be on my show have loved, is that I can actually name the names of the people that I know are listening and or are a fan of the show that will go and take those actions. So I wouldn't look at it from a numbers perspective. Like, looking at the numbers is great. It's hard not to look at the numbers. People want something to continue to justify, and I definitely think that you should set up some way of being able to track your numbers. But looking at it constantly is tough to. Because it can make you feel like you're not like you're treadmilling on zero, as I say, right? Like there's not enough going on. There's not, where's all the people? Look, when I got started, like I thought within 3 months I was going to have a fistful of money coming through the screen, like sacks and sacks. No, I didn't. And I used to say a lot to the people that would ask, like, oh, so you're doing this podcast thing, like, how much money have you made? And I'm like, well, hold on a second. If I was going to school, the first question you wouldn't be asking me is, how much money are you making at school?
Right.
Like you're going to school to be a doctor. Cool. How much money are you making at school? Like
zero?
That's not right. Exactly. Right. So
Spending
you're not
money?
going to, exactly. So almost 6 years into this thing, I mean, I've made a decent amount of money in the sense of like, because of my podcast, but not necessarily from my podcast. Because, one way to make it from the show is to have sponsors, right? Or to have, to offer a service that people are directly taking action to come back to you and say, yes, I want you to hire me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
The problem there is getting people to take action off a podcast is actually pretty hard. It's one of those things where to have people take direct action takes them hearing it a lot of times. And if you don't believe me, I could give you another example, right? So like I watch tech YouTubers all the time, and they will have like, oh, FreshBooks is blah 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 blah, and use our offer code da da da. And it's like how many times do I have to hear that message before it actually is like, I think I'm actually ready for it, and I think I'm going to actually use their offer code to sign up for it and take action. So it's not a short-term game. Like, very few shows get away with the idea like, hey, this weekend we're going to be doing this thing over in New York. Now, if you have like a local podcast, which we talked about this like last weekend during the IndiePod virtual conference, two of our speakers talked about local podcasts. You might be able to get away with that, and you might have an easier time having sponsors because they know that only a certain group of people are going to be listening to the show. So it's very, very niche in that sense. So you might have an easier time getting those listeners to take action. Versus just like, oh, I'm hearing Casper mattresses on every single show. Like, who am I going to pick? And that's one of the reasons, like, I also avoid the affiliate stuff because, the brand is getting all the listening power, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to take action with my code. Take action with my code. So, unless I'm getting some kind of money up front for the sake of, like, doing the ad reads and all that. Now, with that said, I think that you, as a podcast, if your goal is to get sponsorships, get some kind of sponsor right out of the gate. Even if you have to do like an affiliate Amazon deal or something like that, like you talk about something in the show or mention something in the show, create like a pretty link to jump to your Amazon affiliate link, and just so that you have that spot, right? So it's like, people are listening, they expect it. This isn't like a free show that's never going to have ads, because like some people get really, really picky when like, and I've seen this with some of my friends in podcasting where they're like, hey, we moved to Patreon and we went from doing 4 episodes a month to now we're doing 3 episodes a month and 1 episode's only for Patreons. And like people get real indignant about that. And I'm like, that's a shame. I feel bad for those people that feel that way, getting 3 instead of 4, and God forbid you have to give $1 to the person spending countless hours to create this content. Like I'm sorry, but you're very sad.
I'm going to prove a point here. You ready? Watch this banner. Here comes the banner right now. Boom. Joe's latest book, Sales Won't Save Your Dealership, on Amazon from our BIDS link. Nobody's going to click that.
So no one is going to click that, number one, right? Because it's in the screen, it's in the video,
right,
so
you can't. If you're watching, if you're listening, the point is This small action is a very big action for a lot of people. So, one, of course, you want to support Joe. Of course, you want to support the show. But to click on that link is it's like, oh, because all you've got to do is type in Amazon, Joe Pardo, and Amazon is glad to cut us out of that deal. So it illustrates how challenging it is. And I do want to talk about Patreon a little bit because we're talking a lot of ways to these folks that want to start their own podcast. And by the way, more importantly than buying Joe's book and going through our link, this is much more important. And this is where you create power as a podcast producer. Go there, you buy the book, and then you rate and review it. If you do that, I'll consider that payment to me, because now you're doing something powerful for Joe. And the more I can create value for my guest, for the audience, the more I'm going to get that value back. I'm just planting big, fat, healthy seeds when we do that kind of thing.
I want to find out how you found that book, because I don't advertise that book anywhere, because it's supposed to be Sales Won't Save Your Business. But this is like a hack for anybody that writes a book that's kind of generic-ish, like Sales Won't Save Your Business. I literally just changed the word business to dealership, to food truck, to legal nurse business. Thank you.
I found your book in the most
Hotel.
uncommon of places. Amazon. I typed in Joe Pardo.
I typed in Joe Part 2, and the first thing that came up was my 31 Life-Changing Concepts book. My second one was 101 Blogging Mistakes and Smart Fixes, which was not, I mean, it's a book I'm quoted in, but it's not a book by me.
Yeah, these are books with your name on them. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in it, but I'm not.
Right.
I'm not the guy.
But so the point about the links is true. It's very hard. And also, I don't want to pimp my audience to be salesman of the year for Casper mattresses, right? That as someone who's starting to get your podcast together, okay, great. Have a way to, promoting Audible for Amazon will get you a click. But that time you spend saying the words, hey, go to Audible and click on our link, and they give you, let's say, $3. If you can't have 100 people listen to your show and the conversion rate is, say, 1% or 1/10%, you're going to maybe make $3. Each time you do that, you're better off going outside and recycling cans, because you're going to get to $3 faster.
Well, yeah. I mean, so even if you have to sponsor the show yourself, right? Like, even just writing, like creating like a short lead magnet for people to reach out to, or free anything that people can go and get it. It's just the spot, right? Like, you're getting the reps of doing an ad read, just like I did an ad read at the beginning of this show, right? Like, P asked me to do a I don't know what they call it in the biz, but a bumper. That's right. I have a folder called bumper, because I have a bunch of bumpers that I asked people to do from years ago that I still haven't gotten around to use.
That's why we put them in every show, so that way it gets used. Otherwise, you're right; those files sit derelict. Yeah,
exactly.
A good idea folder has so much stuff in it.
Well, I have Evernote, and I have a whole notebook full of pages and pages and pages of ideas of things, shows and things that I wanted to create. Just there's only so much time, and when you're getting to the point where, like, okay, where's the money going to come from, right? Like, especially if you leave a job, or you whatever you're going to do, like whatever you're doing, whatever your plan is, if it involves making money, this comes to a point where you got to figure out, like, okay, great, this is awesome, I'm enjoying it, but like, where's the money coming from? How am I going to get people to convince them to give me the sack of money? And I haven't always been successful at it. I've been through a lot of different website ideas and creations with my wife specifically, who creates birthday cards and greeting cards and stuff by hand. And well, now we have 2 kids, so that's kind of all been sidetracked. But like, we did a lot of other ideas and websites with launching ideas and things where it's like I learned from each one of them. But I also learned that they didn't work for one reason or another that I wasn't willing to compromise on. And some of them was like infrastructure, putting money out to pay. Like, I am a cheap SOB sometimes about certain things. So when it comes to like, oh, like I could automate the service and it'll but it costs $50 a month or something, and I'm like, I ain't paying $50 a month. Like, get the heck out of here. Like, this is bootstrapping it, right? So like, I'll go and find the 4 free softwares that I need, and link them together through like IFFT, or manually taking them and inputting it into the next one and into the next bucket and then the next bucket till we get it rolling, right? I'm not going to spend $50, $60, $100 a month just on services that, when we haven't even proven the concept yet. Like, to me, that's insane. Now, with that said, what you learn sometimes is that you might have actually been successful had I just spent some of that money to do it, because the process on the customer side would have been that much less painful.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, it truly is in podcast terms. It is always time and money.
yeah,
Like I can get you going on your podcast faster than you can, for sure. Not you, Joe. Just the average person. But you can spend that money to get going faster to flatten the ramp, or you climb that mountain yourself, and then see if you have a show in 10 shows. And the numbers say you're not gonna. So you're right. You have to find, like, when do I spend money and when do I not? What things are worth your time and effort? Like, here's some advice for free for anybody who's listening. If you're the CEO, you probably should not be the host of your own show, because you should be too busy.
It depends, right?
For sure.
If you have prior experience doing this, and you're not like, oh, I need to write a script and then read the script, and I have to write the script because it has to sound like me, then yeah, I agree. If you have a marketing department and you want to be the face of the company as well as the CEO, and you can just show up and like you talk, then you can pull it off. But if you're the CEO of a small business where there's like 10 of you, and none of them are the marketing person that already knows how to do all this stuff and like has the bandwidth to fit it into their week, then yeah, probably not. So don't take it on
There's
yourself.
a lot of ifs to make a CEO a good host. How about that?
Well, that too. I mean, but reps will help that, right? Reps can cure some of that if you're willing to actually take it seriously and put the work in to make it, be good.
What?
With the work, you're right. I'm supposed to just show up and talk. Well, hey, look, people get paid tens of thousands of dollars to show up and talk all the time. And they aren't just people that say we're like past presidents or first ladies or, one of the only people to walk on the moon. Like, people get paid for this stuff because they're good at it. There's plenty of people that played in the NFL, but only certain ones are going to get paid tens of thousands of dollars to show up and speak. Yeah.
And boy, when you're not good at it, it shows up. So if you're a CEO, find something better to do with your time, and either hire someone to be a good host, which is a great idea, or find that person in your staff who's crazy passionate about it. And then it's your show. You pop in when you want. You're like, I got 20 minutes. I'm jumping in on my show. That's my advice. So go do something else. Go make money to pay for the show, because it's so valuable to you, So that's why I say
what moves the needle, right? Like that's the thing. It's like marketing is great too. Like right now we're in a weird space that is kind of uncharted territory, but if you can do other things that move the needle that much more, and like I said, if you have somebody that is already passionate about it at your shop or your business or whatever, like show up, do the recording, and then leave and get out and let them handle all the other things. Because I would argue that hiring somebody else to be the face of your business is kind of tricky in a lot of different ways, because that's not, because you're going to be there tomorrow. They are not, right? And that's the the gray area. But by and large, don't be like, I'm the CEO, I'm gonna do this podcasting thing, break open YouTube and like start figuring out and look at all the free guides and everything and piece it all together. Like, don't go investing 20, 30 hours to figure out how to make it work. Like, if you have that person that can the bandwidth to make it happen, be the host if you feel comfortable and confident in doing it and willing to look like an idiot in the process until you get good at it. I more power to you to own the brand.
It's not as common now, but for a long time people would say you should just have a Patreon page. Like Patreon was magic. And you could tell that they didn't know what they were talking about, because if you go to Patreon and you search for podcasts and you look at, you can get to the point where you see all the top podcasts, um, there's not a lot of money being made by very many shows. And when you do like, hey, these guys make a lot of money, but there's 8 of them, because you can see like there's all these hosts, and that means that they're all doing. So it's really hard. So saying the words Patreon, or if you're thinking, I'll just start a Patreon page, Joe already made this point. People don't even want to spend $1 for these things. Really, the money has to come from your own imaginative path. You've got to find a path that works for you. And if Patreon works for you, then God bless, do that. But don't look. Here's how you find out if Patreon will work to you. Go to your 5 best friends and say, I need you to give me $5 a month to support my podcast while I get started, and see what they say. And if you can get those 5 friends to do it, you're doing Patreon yourself, and go find 5 more, and go find 5 more until you have, an actual your own patronage base. And you don't need Patreon to do it for you, because ultimately Patreon is good for Patreon. And I have no hard feelings towards these guys. But when they go out to raise money, they're raising money on their quote unquote audience. And if you have a big audience, they will pimp your show over, say, Joe's show, who he has 2 patrons, because I would do the same thing too. I'm not going to pimp someone's show if they don't have an audience. So when it comes to, and this is just, I'll let Joe say what he wants about Patreon. And again, I'm not against it. I'm saying understand what Patreon is there for. And if you can already build an audience, you really don't need Patreon. You can do it through other means.
I think they make it easier. In some regards, I mean, I don't personally use it. I pay for, I spend money to a handful of people that I may or may not consume their content because, like I said, I don't really watch or listen to the podcast right now.
Sure.
But I think it's easy to distribute the extra content. They make it a little less painful. And easier on the people that are giving it to you. So it's not like, oh, hey, cool, thanks for reaching out, and sending this money via PayPal. Here's a link to a private RSS feed for that other content. Now you got to add it to your podcast feed, and then hope that they don't give it to anybody else. I mean, they probably wouldn't, but you never know. Yeah. It's just little things like that. I wouldn't be looking at them to be like the fountain of free money or something like that. It's not that's not what it is. What it is you monetizing your own people. And just because they have a search, that's good, it's cool, but it's not gonna move the needle for you, most likely.
The biggest problem that no one ever asks about is discoverability, right? I mean, you can have the world's best podcast. Look at both of our podcasts. If you stack up Podcast Mountain, we are above the first percentile. There are only so many shows that are bigger than ours at this point, because we've got the reps, we've got the audience, our shows generate money. All of a sudden, there aren't a lot of shows that have all these things together, right?
Yeah.
So, but yet we still aren't at the tippity top because of discoverability. Joe Rogan, Adam Carolla, these guys have powerful audiences.
Right, that they build up prior to podcasting. So it's not even fair to be on the road. Same.
Yeah. And getting it early and recognizing what it was.
Right. And having TV shows didn't hurt,
Right. Exactly. Right. So we've all got our advantages. We're more nimble than those guys are. We can do whatever we want. We can constantly rehash new ideas.
Yep.
We can get the same guests. All of these things are possible. But when you look at I
don't know if I could get Neil deGrasse.
Oh, sure you can.
I mean, maybe I gotta ask and probably wait for a reply and keep at it, but it's not impossible. I mean, they're still just people, right? They're not. I mean, I don't know that like Mark Maron had the President Obama on the show. I don't know that I could get the president on my show here in my garage. But it's not impossible. Just. Yeah. Not super likely either, right?
Whatever. I mean, I always say this all the time, and again, this is because we have first percentile shows. I'm always pleased and surprised, but I'm never shocked when someone says yes. So if President Obama or President Bush or even President Trump, if those guys said yes, I'd be like, yeah, of course they did. Of course. I mean, they should want to come on these kinds of things. I just assume that here's my advice to podcasters. Never assume the no for Neil deGrasse Tyson. Just assume the yes. And then if you can't, while you're waiting for Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's an extraordinarily busy person who makes a lot of money with his time, as you're waiting for that moment in time, him to say, okay, yeah, you've been asking for 2 years. Okay, yeah, let's do it. Who's the other Neil deGrasse Tyson in that field?
Yeah.
Who's the person who nobody's talked to? Who does he sit next to and giggle with at conferences? Because that guy, if you ask those two guys, both of them are going to say yes, because you're going to get one and one is going to bring the other one in. You really can build these networks, and you have the ability to do that, but it takes reps. You got to work hard to get to that part of the mountain.
Yeah. There's a good story about that where I was, I don't know, a couple months into podcasting, maybe 2 months, 3 months into podcasting, and there was a guy, he's a professor out in California. He was on the show like Enter the Wormhole, and he was like the plumber or whatever that like proved Stephen Hawking wrong about his like black hole theory. So like I did some research, found like his phone number on the school website, called, and he actually answered the phone. And when I was like, hey, look, I'm doing this shows, Dreamers Podcast, and I'd really love to interview you about the experience that you had in like proving Stephen Hawking wrong, and the fact that you were like a plumber, like all that just sounds. Yeah. Is so awesome, and he declined, and I'm like, oh, well, that really stinks. But thanks for the story, appreciate it, that kind of thing. Yeah. But at least he answered and heard me out before saying no.
Yeah, and you might go back, and he might be like, you know what? Damn, you know what? You're right. I'm going to do it. Maybe he had a day. How many times have you got a hold of somebody and they said, it's funny you should ask. We've just been talking about, right?
Yeah, that's how I got some of my sponsorships for Indie PodCon. Was just it happened to be the right day at the right time that I happened to call, and it just with the right message on the phone at the time, and say, one person was like, normally I hang up on people like you, but you caught my attention. I'm really interested, and let's make it happen. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like this is awesome.
So let's move out of the podcast realm a little bit, and let's just talk about Joe and your day-to-day work. Now, we're not going to totally ignore podcasting because it's a big part of what you do, but what's a day in the life like for you, man? I mean, you've got
now
a
or like prior to like the last month and a half.
Right. Yeah. Right now.
Right now. Oh, okay. Right now. So I wake up usually I've been getting up a little later. I usually try to get up between 4 and 6. I've been mostly waking up between 6 and 7 right now. Because I'm not going into the shop anymore. So I after leaving my family's business, I did come back in 2018, middle of 2018, to build out a bigger repair shop for with my dad. So normally I would be going to the shop. I'd get there by 8. But now like I'm waking up, about 6, usually about 6, and I'm working on these conferences. So, right now I just got wrapped up the first virtual Indie PodCon conference that took place last weekend, March 28th, 29th. It was a 2-day event, live stream. We had over 40 speakers. It was crazy. And now we are, I'm working on Super Entrepreneur Conference, 8 hours of learning and inspiration, which is going to be live streamed as well, April 11th, all day from like 9 to 5 a.m. or 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time. So 8 hours. And I'm also about to be, and I haven't announced this yet, but when I posted a poll, when I posted the poll, what the next hyper focused Indie PodCon virtual conference should be, it's very clear that people want social media marketing. So like that's going to be the next conference, virtual conference. So like we're pulling this one off on Saturday. Depending on how this week goes, I will probably already have like the speaker submissions and stuff ready to roll before by end of Sunday, and maybe by next weekend we'll pull off the next virtual conference. So that's that, and then I'm still doing the let me see, I'm still doing that was still working at the shop in terms of doing the marketing and stuff like that. and overseeing the operations and the tech end of all that. So there's that. Spending as much time as I can with the kids, trying to enjoy that. My son actually, who's 2, so I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. My son who's 2. My son who is 2. Yes, I do go by my middle name. Isn't that cute? He was really a big mama's boy. And I pretty much have seen him pretty much every day since March 6th, 7th, 8th. So like March 9th, I've seen him every day. And he is starting to like ask for me now and that kind of stuff instead of just like mommy. He just turned 2 in February. So he's a fresh 2. He's a fresh 2. Yeah. But yeah, so spend time with them, and then at night I'm either recording or I'm trying to watch a movie with my wife and enjoy the time that we have in between. Now I'm reaching out to sponsors and getting everything together for these conferences, and it's really turning into a business model all in itself, because it kind of have a captive audience with people being stuck at home and wanting to consume this kind of content. Yeah. And I'm honored to be able to bring people together and make people happy and the positivity aspect of it. So it's for anyone who doesn't know the super Joe Pardo part, the super is my desire to bring the super out of everyone, like you, Super Pete.
Thanks, man.
Right, exactly. So that's what that's about. It's not about me being the best or the beast, or I should say the beast. I keep going back.
As he wears a beast shirt, yeah.
Yeah, well, beast shirt that I created. So
I'm wearing a Break It Down show shirt. So
I love it. Love it. No, it's awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, so like that's really my day at this point. It's just spending a lot of time at home, spending time with the family, spending time on the business, working with my clients, usually at night still. Getting this conference set up, doing the marketing for the shop still, and hoping for hanging on, hoping for the best,
Yeah, and what I'm not hearing is a lot of downtime. You said maybe watch a movie with your wife.
Well, so like I don't watch TV. I also, like I said, I don't listen to podcasts and I don't read books. So for me, movies I love it because it's a completionist kind of thing. I can watch the beginning, middle, and an end, and I feel satisfied with that. Versus like TV shows who just like, oh, this is an hour long. We're going to stretch everything we can because we got to fill 10, 15 hours in a season and we got to make this work, people. So we can get, paychecks. And I'm just like, nah, I ain't doing that. So like we watch movies, and yeah, so I'm trying to spend as much time as I can with her. I get to spend more time with her now than I ever was, because at the shop, like I was there from 8 to 5. Then usually I would be on the phone in the morning, so 7:30 to 8. I'm on the phone with either clients or potential clients or working out deals for one of the conferences. And then as soon as I get done the shop at 5, I'm usually on the phone. Like as soon as I'm off, like boom, I'm walking out the door with the phone in my ear and jumping in the car and like talking to people and trying to get things rolling. So there's always something on. And then I come home and spend time with the kids, and then they help get them up to bed, and then get back on a call, or 1 or 2 nights a week I'll spend time with my wife, and on the weekdays, on the weekends I try to make as much time as I can with them.
When you started this journey, 6 years ago, you didn't know anything that you know now. Like, it's so different. And there is something that's been given to you because of the show. And we talk about creating value. Mm-hmm. We talk about monetizing. Hey, monetizing, how about all the great friends that I've got that are desperate to, support me and send me free books? World-class authors send me books all the time. I mean, that to me is valuable. So what's something that you've received because of the podcast? And not to be material, but what's something that you've realized and you're like, if nothing else, this is all I need?
I'm going to say it's really comes down to the people, the friendships, the people like you, Pete, getting to have these conversations with people from all over. I have friends on, like, I don't know about every continent, but I think maybe every continent at this point. I think I have friends on. So it's one thing that having a show like the Dreamers podcast where I could interview literally anyone early on. Now it's really business focused, and like I said, it's going to be changing to the Super Joe Pardo show, which will still be the same show, just a different name, inline branding, and all that. But having such a huge wide network of people and having people like in so many different countries and states uh all over the world is just, I don't, it's just awesome. Like and this is and here's the thing, right? It's just getting started, right? So like I've been doing this for 6 years, and when people say like, oh, you're an overnight success takes 7 years, like I still feel like I'm probably 4 years away from people saying that about me. So
Yeah.
it's literally just getting started. And that's what it was so frustrating, and I knew it early on. Like it was so frustrating to have people say, "Oh, well, how much money are you making from this?" And at the time, like I was building websites for people because that's what I knew how to do to be able
Right.
to keep the lights going. Right. That was so like that was everything at the time. But because of my podcast, my life has been so radically different. I mean, I've gotten to speak at the United Nations with like the little ear cups and the little microphone room, and the big,
Yeah.
I mean, it's an intimidating room, and it wasn't even fully full either, and it was still intimidating as hell.
Yeah.
So, trying to summarizing everything, like it really just comes down to people, the amazings that everybody else is doing, and I'm just getting to like, I was getting to document those stories. When it comes to podcasting and running indie podcon, formerly Mid Atlantic Podcast Conference, that part of it was really magical in the sense that I got to connect with so many people, so many leaders in so many different industries and niches. I mean, to me, it just is it's so awesome to be able to serve those people in a way
Folks on the
that brings them
fence,
together.
if it's possible to still be on the fence after hearing all that.
Oh, oh, are you there? Oh, hello. Wait, it froze. Oh,
All right. Lost Joe for a second there. Stand by. I'm going to bring
Oh,
him back in. Hey,
there we go.
Joe. How's it going?
Hey,
The good thing is, the audio show, this is all going to seem so seamless. I'm going to fix all this stuff. That's live. That's live production for you, you know?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I do have to get going in a minute here.
Yeah. Let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
So,
awesome.
Listen, I
appreciate that. Thank you so much. I really try my best to give everything I can to everybody, 110%.
Joe was talking about a comment I put up for him on YouTube. Hey, how great is Super Joe Pardo?
That's right.
Go check him out on Facebook, and you will see all of his work there. Listen, go friend and follow this guy. I'm telling you, if you would do any kind of business at all, you're going to find value in what he does. And again, friend him, because he's a friendly guy, and you're going to love it. Joe, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you. Look, we're so fortunate to get to do this. The people part, what a great answer, because it's so true. This is about people, and look, marketing, PR, sales, all that stuff. Great. Let me go stack up great people, and I'll beat you every time.
The connections. It's all about the connections, and and those memories that you get to build with those people. That's what's the most important, and that's what people are going to remember. Easy marketing and stuff it's always amazed me. I don't want to get on my soapbox, I really do got to get going, but it's always amazed me how people could be like, all you have to do is this funnel thing and it'll be just great, and everybody would just and it's like, no, stop it, because if you can do that, that's awesome. And if that works for you and you know how to spin a web so that people can say, oh, I trust this landing page, I trust that, blah, blah, blah. Like, if you can do that, more power to you. Seriously, that's an incredible skill that I do not have. And as time goes on, I want it less and less. Like, in the beginning, I really wanted, because I was like, oh, how do I make that easy money, yo? Like, sign me up. Like, I want it. But as time has gone on, I definitely am not. It's not me, and it's not going to be me. So I need to make it work for me, and that's, I think, is the most important thing that people need to take away. Is everybody's going to have their own way of doing it. You could take seeds from each of the people and like plant your own garden, with a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to like figure out what's going to get you the most, move the needle the most, put the most rocket fuel in the jet to go.
Yes. And start with love as your rocket fuel. Hey, thanks, Joe. I appreciate you coming on.
I love that. Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Super Pete. Have a great night, and everybody, thank you so much. And this guy right here, I'm excited to have you speak in the near future at one of our events.
All right.